Alright guys, welcome to lesson 112, multiplying and dividing integers. So if you'll recall with me, the term integer means whole number, and that can be a whole positive number or a whole negative number. So -5, +5, -10, +10, those are all integers. And so we've already done addition and subtraction with integers, and that proves to be a difficult lesson for a lot of people. So if you still find yourself confused by adding and subtracting negative numbers, don't worry, we will get more work done on it. But let's take a break and look at multiplying and dividing integers, because in truth it's a lot easier to do. And also you've been doing some of this already. So let's look at an example here of multiplying two positive integers. Now the first thing I want you to notice is that I didn't write a multiplication sign, I didn't write addition, subtraction, or division. I just have these two numbers in parentheses right next to each other. So the first thing you need to remember is that when you have things in parentheses next to each other, it indicates division. Or if you had, let's say, just a number in a variable. 3t means 3 times t. Alright, let's get back to it. So +3 times +4, we already know that 3 times 4 is 12, and that it's a positive. So a positive times a positive equals a positive. That's one thing that reigns true regardless of the numbers you are using. You could have +300 times +400, and you would get a positive answer. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to multiply a positive number and a negative number. So we'll do +3 and -4. So if you recall from your early elementary years learning how to multiply, one thing that you do is it shows you how many times you add this number to itself. So one thing to think of is having -4 added to itself 3 times is sort of what's being indicated here. Okay, so I have this little number line off to the side just to visualize that. Let's say we start at 0 and we first add our first -4. So we're going to go back to -4. Okay, so that's -4 once. Then what we're going to do is we're going to add another -4. So -4 and -4 gets us to -8. And then as you see, we need to do this 3 times, so let's do it one more time. And if you look down on our number line, what number are we at? We're at -12. So what you need to know here is a positive times a negative equals a negative. And once again, this is true regardless of the value of your integers. So we could have a +2 and a -100, and it would equal -200, because 2 times 100 is 200, and a positive times a negative is a negative. Alternately, we could have had a +100 and a -2. Even though 100 numerically is a much larger value, because we're doing multiplication, our answer is still going to be negative. Okay, so keep that in mind. A positive times a negative equals a negative. Okay, so one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work out some more problems here, and then I'm going to write some multiplication facts for you, as well as some division facts. So we just did a positive times a negative equals a negative. And when we multiply two negative numbers, the product is positive. So let's do -3 times -4. Okay, a negative times a negative will equal a positive. Okay, so one way to get through that sequence is to think of these examples. So we have 3 times 4 is 12. We know that's true. So we also know that 3 times the opposite of 4 is the opposite of 12. So 3 times, remember opposite just means the same number with the opposite sign. So 3 times the opposite of 4 is the opposite of 12. And then finally, the opposite of 3 times the opposite of 4 is the opposite of 12. So this is really wordy. I'm going to write it out. 3, already messed up. The opposite of 3 times the opposite of 4 is the opposite of, I didn't even spell that right, of the opposite of 12. So I'm quoting these parts here and this part here. It's the opposite of 12, which essentially is -3 times -4. So the opposite of 3 times the opposite of 4 is the opposite of 12. In this case, a positive. So that was just a bunch of wordy nonsense that basically means two negative numbers multiplied by each other equals a positive. Once again, regardless of the value of those digits, if they are both negative and you multiply them together, you will get a positive integer. Let's look at another one. Let's look at the one we looked at before, -2 times -100. So a negative times a negative is a positive, and then just multiply your digits. 2 times 100, 200. Okay? So just honestly, that last little bit, don't even worry about it. It's just trying to explain mathematically why a negative times a negative is a positive, why that's true. But let's write some multiplication facts, and you'll notice that these multiplication facts lend themselves to division facts. So the first one is that a positive times a positive equals a positive. Okay? +3 plus +4 times +4 equals +12. Okay? Now our second fact, a positive times a negative equals a negative. And I'm going to write this problem two different ways to show you that as long as there is one positive and one negative, it will equal a negative number. And then finally, a negative times a negative equals a positive. Okay, so now let's see how these lend themselves to division facts. We also know that we can also say that a positive divided by a positive is going to be a positive. Okay, so 12 divided by 3 is 4, and 12 divided by 4 is 3. Okay, they keep their positive signs. All right, alternately, let's look at doing the division represented by these facts here. A negative divided by a positive equals a negative. Or excuse me, wow, I said that wrong. A negative divided by a positive equals a negative. Hopefully that's what I said. Or let's look at this one, a negative. So we're looking at this fact here. First we did 12 divided by +3. Now we're going to do 12 divided by -4. 12 divided by -4 is +3. So look here, a negative divided by a negative is a positive. Just like a negative times a negative is a positive. Okay? So let's look at our last fact here. A positive divided by a negative is a negative, and a positive divided by a negative is a negative. Okay? The reason these facts are lining up with each other is we undid the multiplication into division problems here, here, and here. I didn't do this one because I just wrote that one for fun. But basically, what we could also say, and maybe I'll just write this on another slide. I can't remember what this last slide is. Okay, I kind of wasted that time. Let me erase this. So if you need this, write it down. I'm going to erase this and write down some facts instead. Like, I don't know if I want to use symbols or words. I'll probably just use symbols. But just so you know. First of all, positive times positive equals positive. Positive divided by positive equals positive. Okay? That's our first fact. Our second fact, positive times a negative equals a negative. Now, the part that might become confusing is in this second set of division. So a negative divided by a positive is a negative, but a negative divided by a negative is positive. So basically, if you ever have two of the same signs, it's going to be positive. Two of the same signs, it's going to be positive. If you have two opposite signs, it's going to be negative. Two opposite sides, the answer is going to be negative. And then our final set of facts, we've got a negative times a negative equals a positive. So remember what I just said, if you have two of the same signs, it's going to be positive. If you have two opposite signs, the answer is going to be negative. And that's whether you're looking at division or, I guess I don't have to write this twice. That's whether you're looking at division or multiplication. All right? So I don't know if that cleared anything up, but we're about to do some real examples, and hopefully that does. So on page 588, we have some examples that they want us to calculate mentally. The first is positive 8. So I'll actually write out some of these problems. Positive 8 and positive 4. So right off the bat, positive equals a positive. 8 times 4 is 32. Letter B, positive 8 divided by positive 4. Okay? Positive divided by positive is positive. 8 divided by 4 is 2. Okay? Letter C, positive 8 times negative 4. Now remember here, a positive times a negative, so we have two of the opposite signs, is going to take the negative sign. 8 times 4 is 32. So it just becomes negative 32. Now letter D might be a little bit harder because it's division with a positive and a negative. So negative 8 divided by negative 4. So we have two opposite signs. It's going to take the negative sign. 8 divided by 4 is 2. So that became negative 2. Letter E, negative 8, positive 4. Opposite signs takes the minus sign. 8 times 4 is 32. Right? Letter F, negative 8 divided by positive 4. We have two opposite signs, so it's going to be the negative sign. 8 divided by 4 is 2. Letter G, negative 8 times negative 4. So we have the same sign. It's going to be a positive answer. 8 times 4 is 32. And finally, negative 8 divided by negative 4. So they have the same sign. The answer is going to be positive. 8 divided by 4 is 2. Okay, so that was 8 different problems using the same digits, but with different signs. And you can see that we came up with a lot of different integers as our answer. Okay, so if you're confused, let me write it here. Positive times positive is positive. Negative times negative is positive. But negative times positive is negative. Okay, that's the key, and it reigns true with division as well. Okay, so going back to Google Classroom, go back there, do the practice set. That way I can see that you understand this lesson, or if you don't, and I can see where you guys might need some help. Okay, so if you need help with this lesson or with anything else, please let me know. Thanks, guys.